so in the spring and in the fall. So we're glad you're able to all be in here tonight. We have with us from Medicare Solutions Network, David Wylly, Robin Dawson, and Lori Wylly. So they're here for to tell you all about Medicare 101. And I'm sure that you all are hearing a lot and get a great handle on Medicare from this presentation tonight. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah. Big hand, big hand. Let's not wait on the excitement. It's an exciting night tonight, okay? If you didn't know that you were coming to Medicare, I'll warn you, you're probably going to feel a lot like this guy. There's a lot of confusion always, but this year in the marketplace even more. There have been some changes. We want to describe those here tonight. Very important to understand we're heading into the annual election period. That means you're able to make some changes on some things, not changes on other things. Can I get a show of hands? How many people here are already in Medicare? What are you doing here? The insurance companies are not going to be happy with you. You're supposed to make one decision and throw it in the drawer and never look at it again. That's never been our speed. We're brokers, we're insurance brokers. Please don't let that throw you here tonight. We're not selling. What we're doing is hopefully educating. Hopefully letting you know that there's opportunities to change your coverage. Every year your coverage rolls over. You don't have to do anything. But this year it'd be very important to take some looks because there's some changes in the marketplace brought to us by the Inflation Reduction Act. And we'll go into that in depth. We're brokers. That means we represent all the products in the marketplace. It's important for you to understand sometimes you might be working with a captive agent that only represents one company. That does not avail you of the cornerstone of Medicare, which is competition and transparency, which we can use through the aging process to potentially drive premiums down. We want to control this thing. We want to look at it on a regular basis. We want to make smart decisions initially, and then we want to keep it on a short leash. And that's what we do. We can be your tour guides, help you through this world. As you approach 65, you're going to be berated by your friends and family. We always say Medicare is a world of partial sentences and half-truths and floating asterisks. Understand the landscape to make fully informed decisions. That's what we want to do. We want to help you here tonight. Favorite quote. Mark Twain said, good decisions come from experience, and experience comes from bad decisions, okay? We've seen every possible mistake that people can make in this world, and I get it. Your neighbor's over here, and the guy from work is over here, and your sister-in-law did something over there, but they might have chosen wisely for their position, but not your position. The situation here is that everybody's individual in Medicare, even a husband and wife. You get separate Medicare numbers, you get separate Medicare cards, and we can build a separate package of benefits designed specifically for your situation. What we're going to do here tonight is talk about Medicare. Our goal is to be educational and give you a broad view of what's going on. But the rules of engagement are, you ask specific questions, I have to give you specific answers. But we got no dog in this fight. We represent them all. What's right for you is different than what's right for you, but let's take a look at what's going on here. Medicare and You, the 2025s have come out. Anybody got their 2025s yet? I'm still sporting my 2024. It's a little dog-eared at this point. But this is the Bible of my industry. It's chock full of great information. It's also a tremendous sleeping aid if you have trouble dozing off. This is crushingly dull because it's a government publication. And you won't find any declarative statements in here. What you'll find is a lot of maybe, could be, sometimes is, sometimes isn't. But it's good for a base of information. What's my timing that surrounds Medicare? How do drug programs work? That type of stuff is in here. We'll cover a lot of it tonight, but we can't possibly go into all the detail that you need to know. The book is backed up by a fabulous phone number, 1-800-MEDICARE. And I know that's too many numbers. It's actually 1-800-MEDICAR. But the idea that you've got federal service agents standing by at the ready, this time of year they're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You need to get through to them like Jake and State Farm, 2 in the morning. They'll pick up your phone. The book and the phone number backed up by a fabulous website. This is Medicare.gov. Please note the difference. It's not a .com site. .com sites are sales sites. This is an informational site, chocked with all sorts of good information. But this time of year, or if you're first coming to Medicare, this Find Health and Drug Plans is what we rely on a lot to try to find what's the best drug program for your situation. Currently, we have 21 drug programs that want your business, but they're all doing something a little bit different. Some are great for generics, some are great for brands, and something in between. And it's not unusual that a husband and wife, husband may have a totally different drug program than his wife because he's taking different stuff. But the ability to shop, to see what everyone is doing. Medicare loves competition, they embrace capitalism, they demand transparency, and you have the ability to use all that to your advantage if you'll meet us halfway. Stay engaged. The book, the website, all designed to help you understand what's going on, and that's what we do as well. Try to shepherd you through the process. What's Medicare? Pretty simply, it's the insurance program for folks over 65. As long as you've worked 40 quarters or your spouse has worked 40 quarters, you're entitled to this program, and it's fabulous. Medicare is wonderful. A and B forming the foundation. A and B really good, but A and B not complete. And that's what we're saying right here. With this sentence, Medicare was never designed to cover 100%. You were always expected to have skin in the game, and we need to understand what your exposure is before we can make any moves on completing that coverage and maybe making it a little bit more comprehensive. People can also get here under 65 if you've declared disabled. For 24 months, you can get to the Medicare world. That's a godsend for those people. They represent unique challenges, and we'll try to touch on that a little bit later. The idea that Medicare is going to begin with this Medicare card, and please, I do not mean to infer in any way, shape, or fashion that I'm with the federal government. I just want to show you what that card in your parents' wallet looked like that you couldn't understand. It was kind of pretty, red, white, and blue. And what will happen is Medicare is available to you starting the first day of the month in which you turn 65. We're always on the first day of the month. If you're born on the 23rd, you could still go effective the first day of the month in which you turn 65. And this begins our first pothole of the evening, where you could make a big mistake, and far too many people do. Friends and family will tell you that you've got to get this thing fired up, or there could be penalties, there could be issues, there could be problems. And that's an example of a partial sentence. In a world of partial sentences and half-truths and floating asterisks, people will take this and still stay on their coverage at work. And that's pretty important to understand, this concept of what's called creditable coverage. Creditable coverage says you continue to work, you keep those benefits at work, and there's more than 20 people that work there, then you don't need this. You've got coverage through work, and you have the ability to keep that. We'll wait for you till farther down the line. There won't be penalties on the drug program because you've got a drug program built into the chassis of your group insurance, and there won't be penalties on the Part B because you've got creditable coverage. We've seen too many people activate both, continue to work, and only find out years later they never should have activated that Part B because it has a premium that you're going to pay, and you wouldn't need to pay that premium if you've got creditable coverage. A has no premium and typically can't hurt you. It's just going to add some additional benefits. If you continue to work and keep that coverage, you could typically take the A. It's just going to ride shotgun with you alongside your current coverage through work. But the Part B is an issue because the Part B has a premium that you might not need to pay. Timing here is important. Let's be ahead of the game. The government says 3 months before your birth month, and 3 months after, the door's open. Please come join us, even if you haven't had coverage for years. And we work with people like that. It's kind of scary, folks that have rolled the dice for several years and then finally get to the world of Medicare, which is far more affordable for most people than the Affordable Care Act. This idea of being ahead of the curve, we don't really want to meet you here. We'd rather meet you out here, 5, 6 months out. We always say the best time to get together with us is when you feel your blood pressure going up. Let's understand what our options are and be ahead of the curve. You won't get this card automatically unless you're receiving Social Security benefit payments. Now, these are two separate items. You don't have to have both together. You can have them separately. Medicare is the medical benefit. Social Security is where they give you back less than you ever gave them, okay? This idea of being ahead of the curve and understanding, they'll send you the card automatically if you're receiving benefit payments because they can snatch the Part B. Otherwise, they're just going to wait to hear from you, and that can be done online. It can be done at a Social Security office. It's much simpler online to do that, but we could fire up this Medicare, and that would be a beautiful thing. Let's make sure of our timing issues. Let's be ahead of the curve, not behind the curve. Let's understand that this is a new world. It's a different world. Husband and wife will be treated separately. You'll get separate Medicare cards. You'll have separate Medicare numbers. That opens the door to another pothole that people sometimes fall into. And the idea that everything here now is done separately, well, wait a second. You're going to keep working, and your wife's on your coverage, and you've got great coverage through work, and you never thought twice about it, but you should. because it's not unusual that husband and wife would be on the same policy. It's through work. And it's not unusual that you'd be paying $500, maybe $600 a month for that coverage through work. And you know how to do math. If it's $600, that's $300 on you and $300 on her. No, it's not. They love you, you're working there. You're probably, of that $600, you're maybe $100, $125. She's the other $475, or in many instances, he's the other $475 because he's on your coverage. If they're turning 65, let's at least have a clubhouse meeting. If we can see what you're paying and what your out-of-pocket maximum is, I promise you, if Medicare is even close, it's better coverage. With Medicare, you can see any doctor, any hospital, anywhere in the United States that take Medicare you're in, you can drop your out-of-pocket maximum down to as little as $240. It's pretty incredible coverage, and it's worth looking at. People run right by that all the time. And we'll get them, he's 68, she's 67, and boy, you could have saved a lot of money in those 2 years since she turned 65. Let's look at this, let's analyze it. Let's be careful of the Part B. Part B has a premium. This year, that base premium per person per month, $174.70. That's per person, but note that it's graded for income. If you don't know this already, the government is very excited to participate in your success. And the more you make, the more they are potentially going to take in premiums, not only on the Part B, they also hit you on the Part D as well. These numbers are based upon ancient history. In 2024, they only have visual on what you filed in 2023. What you filed in 2023, actually reporting what you made in 2022. It's a 2-year look back. And they look at it every year, but every year they're looking 2 years ago. So this idea that you may have made moves, and we run into this far too often, people who promise. They've never made this kind of money before in their lives. I know, but 2 years ago, did you sell some stocks at a profit? Did you have capital gains? Did you maybe do one of these 401k transfers where you took money out and you put it into a Roth? Well, that was a cool idea. That Roth is much lower in taxes, actually zero, but that transfer was income. And people bump up here without even realizing it, and a couple of years later, they're stunned when the bill comes through, and it's higher than they thought they were going to be. Let's be ahead of the curve on this. Let's look at it together and make sure that we're in the right place at the right time, and understand as you start to age, you kind of control your own destiny. How much money are you going to take out of that 401k? How many stocks are you going to sell? Let's keep below these threshold limits and be aware of those threshold limits. We had a couple took money out to help their daughter buy a condo from their 401k. That's a beautiful thing to do. But they took out, just round it up, make it easy numbers, they took out $5,000 too much. And as a result, they broke through the 206 and got into the second level here, where they're each paying an additional $70 and an additional $13 each. Okay, that's not a big deal. Maybe $75 each on it, $150. It's not a big deal, but it's your money, and it should be your money.
I got a question.
Please.
What are the 2025 numbers? We don't know.
Carnex says don't know. That should be coming shortly. It should be graded for inflation. And we'll see those. We've got tentative numbers, but I hesitate to even mention tentative until it's firmed up, because we see sometimes they promise something and they don't deliver. It's a shock. It's the government, right? Please. 2025 numbers will be based on 25 numbers, but they'll be looking at your income from 2023. The idea here, the government does have a heart. You do have the ability to say, wait a second, I know what you're doing. You're looking at ancient history. It wouldn't be unusual as you go to retire, you're probably making the most money you've ever made. Then as you retire, we would think that would start to come down. You have the ability here to file an appeal based on special reasons. The qualifying reasons there could be divorce, could be death, could be adoption, but most commonly, you can file for a redetermination based on life-changing event of no longer working or retiring or fewer hours and your income is dropping down. You have the ability to file that appeal with the folks at Social Security. We've got a pretty sterling record of helping people through that process. I always say I love my government. I just don't want to give them one more nickel than they're already taking, okay?
One more question.
Please?
Earlier you said 40 quarters.
Yes.
Are they consecutive quarters?
Nope, anytime in your working life. You or your spouse, so you can nestle up right underneath her wing or she can you. Please.
So on this, they they base that on your adjusted gross income?
Maggie, your modified adjusted gross income.
Okay, so that would be like if you're taking Social Security and you paying 85%, it would be after that 15% you're not paying tax on, right?
On the Social Security benefit, I believe that goes in the bucket as well. And they want all your dividends, I believe the whole thing. And they want your dividends and they want your passive income. They want every nickel they can lay their hands on. That's between you and the folks at Social Security. All I can do is cheer you on from the sidelines. This is the feds. Please don't shoot the messenger. Just trying to spread the word. Keep an eye on what you're doing. And if you're working with a financial planner, that's probably pretty smart. We work with a lot of them. And we're always drilling home on this, and I know they are too. Comment? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You have a comment?
No problem. No, you see. So here we go. There's 4 parts.
I was asking if it was, they count IRAs and 401ks that you're drawing on as well.
That's clearly income. Yeah, that's probably the biggest source of variable that you've got in retirement. Right. Dialing it up or dialing it down. We just want to make sure we know what these brackets are each year and not veer into oncoming traffic. Don't take out $5,000 too much because you're going to wind up paying more than you should, okay? 4 parts to Medicare, we'll talk about them all here tonight. A and B form the foundation. That's between you and the federal government. That's what that red, white, and blue card is. A and B, very good, but not complete, so we're going to add some additional stuff. Certainly we'd want a drug program. Otherwise, there can be penalties and lockouts if you don't have creditable coverage through work. And then you might be interested in an advantage program. This is literally replaces this, steps in its place, and you run everything through a private insurance company. And we'll talk about those at length here tonight. But the idea of A and B forming the foundation, and A and B gets us entrance into the wonderland of Medicare. Does everybody have their Medicare roadmap? If you don't, Lori can get you one from the back. We use this simply because it's very simple. If you can break this down into bite-sized chunks, it makes a lot more sense than some of these things that I've seen handouts that just seem so confusing. Let's keep it simple. Here tonight, we need to know that if we want to go to Medicare at 65 or 67 or 82, we need A and B. A and B is between you and the federal government. That's the Social Security office. There's no Medicare offices. It's all under the banner of Social Security. So this idea of getting A and B put in place, if you've waited, then we certainly have the ability to activate it further down the road. There's a couple of forms that need to be filled out. If you want to do it right away, you can do it online. But there's A and B, and that starts the process. Now, once we understand what A and B do and don't do, then we're going to come to 2 different pathways to consider. One pathway is called Original Medicare. And we're going to add a drug program, we're going to add a supplement, and like a 3-legged stool, these 3 pieces are going to provide our coverage as we move forward. Customizable, budgetable, a massive selection of doctors and hospitals. There's a lot of good here, but it's not perfect. Nothing's perfect. Maybe you might think about an advantage program. And on those little maps that you've got, do me a favor, scratch out that word Medicare. It's misleading. It's not Medicare. It's a private health insurance alternative. It's just tough to fit that on the page. This is where you park your A and B in a drawer someplace. You still got to pay for A and B, but now you've decided to go with a private insurance company. And anytime you deal with an insurance company, there's always strings attached. There's always things to consider. Insurance is only ever a sharing of risk. With an advantage program, you agree to possibly more narrow networks. Doesn't mean your doctors aren't in those networks, but it's not any doctor, any hospital like you get with Medicare. It's narrower networks, and now it's an a la carte menu. You pay for services as you utilize services. Now, this is not a revolutionary concept. This is very similar to what you had through your employer plan. Here, though, you've got to understand the rules of engagement, as you do with any of this. A and B is between you and the federal government. We can help you, we can direct you, we can cheer you on from the sidelines, but that's between you and the folks at Social Security. All this other stuff that makes Medicare complete or completer, that's what we do. We coach you through that. There's no charge for our services, and what we do is help find the best fit for your situation. But we need to understand what A and B do if we're going to understand what else we need. Let's look at Part A. If you just wrote down on Part A facilities, you'd be good. Please.
So are you saying you can have both of it? The traditional Medicare Part A and B and Medicare? Or Advantage? Or are you saying or, right? Only one or the other, correct?
See that's right there, between those two columns, you see what that says?
Yeah.
It says or.
Okay, I'm
Right.
just making sure.
No, you can't do both. You do one or the other. One pathway or the other pathway. And you've got the ability to migrate between these pathways as you age. One of the things that really gets people very scared, they're going to make a mistake and there's nothing they can ever do about it. That's not true. You're never handcuffed to anything. You've got flexibility and the ability to move between these pathways. More flexibility in Illinois than most states, but we'll talk about that. A and B, good but not complete. What's Part A? Facilities. All of your buildings are going to bill up under Medicare Part A. Well, no building would be more important than the hospital, but under original Medicare Part A, even though it has no premium, it's got exposure, and that hospital's got a copayment. You've got skilled nursing, wonderful, wonderful service, but it's not free. It's got a copayment. And then you've got home health services. We'll send a medical professional right to your front door. And you've got hospice, where there's a copayment. So even though A has no premium, you have exposure under original Medicare. That's what this looks like. This year, and these numbers will change next year, we know that for sure, everything's going up a little bit. This idea of one night in the hospital under original Medicare, you've got a copayment. That copayment is $1,632. That's on you. And that's for one night being admitted into the hospital, but it actually would cover you for up to 60 nights in the hospital. But what would happen is you'd be in the hospital for a couple of nights and then you'd discharge and the clock starts ticking. And if you get to 60 days, you're going to find that that resets. And you could potentially hit that several times in a year if you timed it just wrong. All that never happens. Trust me, it does. That 1632 is on you and could happen multiple times in a year. From the hospital, you could discharge into skilled nursing. Skilled nursing is a wonderful benefit. Medicare picks up the first 20 days, no charge. But then you maybe stay longer. The next 80 days, there's a daily copay of $204, and that can add up pretty quick, and that's on you if all you have is original Medicare. And please note, after 100 days, Medicare does not pay for long-term care. They do not pay for custodial care. This is now going to be on you. Common misconception that there's something out there on the horizon. No, that's all coming out of your pocket. Medicare's not going to pay for somebody to come over and mow the lawn or do the dishes or help you shower. This idea of no long-term care coverage is something you should really consider with your financial planner, or we have programs that we'd love to show you that make a lot of sense in that gap. The idea that there's a world out there of partial sentences and half-truths and floating asterisks. You see an asterisk on the skilled nursing. This is an important idea. In the world of healthcare in general, but Medicare specifically, you need to understand the ground rules of engagement. As good as that benefit is, it has a trigger. The trigger says to get that benefit, you need to be admitted into the hospital for 3 nights. These days, there's 2 ways you can spend the night in the hospital. You can be admitted, in which case we're looking for something, we're going to find it, we're going to fix it, but you could also spend the night in the hospital under observational status. Observation means you haven't been officially admitted. Observational stays do not tick the 3 nights necessary to getting this skilled nursing benefit. Brings up a point. Anything, everything. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? What are my alternatives? What's the medication? Does it come in a generic? Do you have samples? If I lost 10 pounds, do I have to keep doing this? All these things we need to understand. Who's paying for it here? You need to be clear. Home health, no charge to you, but that's going to be very limited. That's going to be a couple of physical therapy visits to get you back on your feet, get you out the door to where you see the doctors in person. And hospice, 5%, that's almost unfair. Basically, Medicare picks up everything, but there can be a very small copayment for the medications you take to remain comfortable before you pass away. This idea of having exposure, well, it is also a set of benefits that could ride very nicely with your employer plan. If you keep your creditable coverage, you could add this on, and maybe if you were hospitalized, it could help. Perhaps if you needed to go to the skilled nursing facility, this could assist. Home health could be a wonderful benefit that would ride tandem with your employer coverage, and A could be a good thing to add on as long as you're not in an HSA. If you're in a health savings account type of insurance, you need to understand Medicare will not allow you to have A or B and still make your tax-deductible contributions to your HSA. If you have that kind of coverage, you know what I'm talking about. We can talk about that after the fact. But be aware of the rules of engagement. A has no premium, but it's got exposure. If A was all of your facilities, B is all of your services. What does that mean? A is all the buildings, and B is everything that goes on in those buildings. All of your services, one word, services for your Part B. That's all the doctors that you see, whether you saw them in the hospital or their office. That's all your lab work, everything from a blood test to a biopsy. That's all of your diagnostic testing. We call that the expensive alphabet soup. EKG, EEG, MRI, CAT scan, X-ray, all these things billing up under B. Durable medical equipment, that could be a COPD machine. It could be a new lens in your eye. It could be a pacemaker. It could be a knee replacement and that device that they put in your knee. And if you've ever had a knee replacement, you would know that PT stands for pain and torture, okay? The idea that you need a professional to hurt you, and that's going to come up under Part B. Ambulance taking us to the emergency room, all of your outpatient services. If you didn't spend the night in the hospital, you've still got a co-payment for the service center that you went to. And these days, outpatient is crazy. I mean, they're doing things in hours that would have kept our parents in the hospital for days. So there's a lot of that going on. And then clinical RX, that's fancy talk for scary meds. Things you don't even want to consider. Chemotherapy, kidney dialysis, radiation treatment. These things that you could potentially, for example now, miracles in modern medicine. There is now chemotherapy that comes in pill form. You can take it in the privacy of your own home in certain instances, and that is a decision that you would make with your doctor. I'd like to know a little bit more because I know those chemo drugs are cutting edge. They're not covered by your Part D drug prescription program, which means you're probably paying a straight out of pocket for those, and they can be thousands of dollars. I'm not here to tell you how to spend your money. I'm just here to advise you from a purely financial aspect. If you had the opportunity to go to an outpatient center and get hooked up, or the opportunity to take these pills in the privacy of your own home, this is a decision for you to make, but I would coach up on the fact that doing it under Part B could save you thousands and thousands of dollars. This is between you and your doctor, but you just want to know, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Who's paying for it? What are my options? A and B structure differently. A has a pay-as-you-go mentality. Do this, pay that, do this, pay that, etc. B is structured much more similarly to your employer plan. Your employer plan has a deductible. Usually once you've met the deductible, you go to co-insurance. And there's a 80-20 split or 90-10, sometimes 70-30, but you've got skin in the game up to a threshold, up to a firewall, up to what they call a maximum out-of-pocket. That maximum out-of-pocket on your employer plans these days can easily be $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. That's why I'd like a shot at the spouse, because you could potentially take that exposure and make it dramatically less on a better network with Medicare and potentially save money in the process. But this idea of B being similar in structure to your employer plan with one glaring omission. Your employer plan has a stop loss. These charges do not. Here's what that looks like. You've got an annual deductible of $240. If you can wrap your mind around that, I mean, that's just an amazing number. Lori and I are on the Affordable Care Act. We each carry a $7,000 deductible, for the privilege of which we each pay $1,000 a month. And they have the gall to call it the Affordable Care Act. It's packed with benefits, I don't disagree, but I don't mean to harsh anybody's buzz. I don't need maternity coverage. I'm pretty certain of that, okay? And that's included in my coverage. But this idea of a $240 deductible is crazy. After you've paid the $240, then Medicare shows up and they partner with you. And they start picking up 80% of the bills, but they hold you responsible for 20% of the bills. And that 20% is unlimited. There's no stopping it. So the understanding that Medicare is an unlimited benefit, but it's got unlimited exposure. That is critically important to understand. And you need 5 knee replacements. They will pay for 5 knee replacements, but every 61 days you could potentially hit that. Stay longer in skilled nursing, you could be popping for that. Hospice, at that point you don't care. A $240 deductible is just almost laughable, but 20% of a lot can be a lot. And we've seen bills that run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. You want to be aware of what this exposure is. How are we going to deal with that? We understand now that Medicare is pretty darn good, but it's not complete. And now we're in the starting blocks. Now we've started to go forward. Now we're moving into a new world. I would say it's a better world. But the difference here is most people are woefully underprepared for this journey because they haven't been educated up on insurance. I get that. Your employer came to you every year and said, here it is, take it or leave it. And you were divorced from the decisions that were made in the boardroom. Network, deductible, co-insurance, co-payments, the drug program, all of that was decided, and they brought you a one-size-fits-most, and it was a great benefit, you took it, but now you get to make those decisions, and initially it's overwhelming because there's so much to choose from. But the good news is, because there's so much to choose from, there's vicious competition in the marketplace. None is more obvious than if you were to look to make this Medicare complete, you'd want to add something to pick up those leftovers. On this pathway called Original Medicare, Medicare now moves into primary position. Now this is a tectonic shift, and you got to wrap your mind around a new world and understand you got to check what you learned in 65 years at the door. This is a new world, and it's got new parameters, and it's got new language, and it's got new definitions, but you bring 65 years of experience and you plug in what you think they mean. They don't always mean that. Here, please.
If that box is in red, that means you must have original Part A and B, correct? No matter what.
Here we go. Only if you want to come to Medicare. You can continue to work and delay that.
In order to get to Medicare Advantage, though, you have to have A and B.
This is correct. Okay, and we'll bring that up a little bit later, promise. So A and B in the starting blocks, and with Medicare moving into primary position, one of the big changes is now with Original Medicare, you have a network, the likes of which you have never seen before. You could have a group that's got great network, and it could be from a top shelf player, and your network is very, very good on a group chassis. It's not so good for me. I'm on the preferred choice, which nobody seems to prefer. The networks for the individual are smaller than the networks for the groups. The groups are better. Medicare is going to blow that away. Any doctor, any hospital, anywhere in the United States, they take Medicare, you're in. That's a tectonic shift. Your entire life, you've been, I got to stay with my carrier. I've got to stay in network. What comes with Medicare? Any doctor, any hospital, anywhere in the United States. Medicare does all the billing, Medicare does all the negotiating, Medicare does all the paperwork, but there's leftovers. What are we going to do with those leftovers? We can send them to a secondary insurance that supplements Original Medicare, or if you prefer the term, fills in the gaps. We call them Medigap plans as well. This idea of a secondary package backing you up, and I understand you'll talk to your friends, oh, we got AARP, it's the best. No, you don't. You really don't. You've got Medicare and secondary coverage from another carrier to make it complete. The beauty of Medicare is the new sheriff in town that's looking out for you. Medicare and You book, 800 number, website, education galore if you'll avail yourselves of it. And they hold these companies on a very tight leash. If you were to look at the insurance world under 65, your head would explode. Blue Cross has different networks, Aetna has different co-payments. United Healthcare is doing something together, Humana, a different world. All those companies trying to confuse you, they don't want you to be able to make a direct comparison. Medicare says, no, we're not playing the game that way. You want to sell supplements, this is how you sell supplements, second page in your handout. This is where it gets fun for us. A and B being primary, A and B the network, A and B, the base coverage, but the base coverage is not complete. We just talked about that. That's this column right here. A and B good, but not complete. Now, Medicare has allowed for 10 different packages of benefits, standardized packages of benefits. Why would there be 10? Because different people have different needs. Husband and wife are different. Within that world of these 10 packages, understand Medicare has defined what these packages are, not the insurance companies. So if, for example, you were to look at N is a nice package of benefits, but this package has been determined by Medicare. Wait a second, you're telling me that N from Blue Cross Blue Shield would be similar to N from Mutual of Omaha? No, it's not similar, it's identical. Medicare says what N is, not the insurance companies. Yeah, but wait a second. I know my doctor takes Blue Cross Blue Shield. Does my doctor even take Mutual of Omaha? No, sir. Does your doctor take Medicare? Medicare's primary, Medicare's the network, Medicare's doing the heavy lift, there's leftovers, and we're going to send them to one of 10 different packages of benefits. viciously competitive. Currently, we've got 44 companies that are offering these products, and they're all beating each other over the head. Well, if they're all doing the same thing, what's the difference? Price is certainly one of those, but dig deeper. The track record of the company, the financials of the company, the customer service of the company, the track record of rate increases is critically important. We see new companies jumping into this field of play all the time, and there's no question they will come and they'll underbid the big hitters, the big steady players. They'll be cheaper, but they'll only be cheaper for a very short period of time. You'll find yourself seduced and abandoned as they go up through the years. You cannot be singled out for a rate increase. Your claims are shared by everyone that's in your risk pool. More people in the pool means steadier rates. One of the new players in the market currently, they're paying a broker bonus and they've got really sharp rates. But the problem there is you could literally, today we looked at it, you could be Mr. 917 in the nation with this program. I don't want to be with 900 people. I want to be with 9,000, 90,000. I want to be with a lot of people to cushion the blow of individual situations. You can never be singled out. If you have a terrible year, they can't raise your rates. They raise it pro rata on everyone that's in that risk pool. Critically important as we age to understand that. These packages run the gamut. What is insurance? It's a sharing of risk. How much risk are you willing to assume? I don't know, but I know that the insurance companies are happy to do whatever you want to do, but the more they do, the more they're going to charge, and you're going to see higher rates if you want more coverage. Seems fair to me, but the idea here that we've got the penthouse, we've got the pup tent, we've got everything in between, what makes sense for you? That's what we got to figure out. But I'd tell you traditionally, the big three, the hitters that have been the strongest through the years, traditionally, F, G, and N. F was a package of benefits so comprehensive that it literally wiped out all exposure. No deductible, no coinsurance, no 1632 in the hospital, no skilled nursing. You literally never saw a bill. But what did we say about insurance companies? The more they do, the more they charge. And I can show you that although it is the most extensive coverage, it is clearly the most expensive coverage because it does everything. Sounds easy, was popular for years. Agents love to sell the thing. Why? Because it's the most expensive thing you can buy. And we're all working on commission. So if I can scare you, and that seems to be the cornerstone of my industry, scare the bejesus out of people and load them up while you got the chance. This F looked really good because Mr. and Mrs. Client, you know you want the best possible coverage, right? Well, define for me best. Best doesn't necessarily just mean extensive. It means where are you getting value for your dollars? And it was easy to see if you ever ran the numbers. We were always big fans of G as opposed to F. G has an empty box there. You're going to reach into your pocket and pay something. What's that empty box? That's the Part B deductible. So if on your page you just wrote down $240, your deductible, after that everything's covered, and just that little bit of cost sharing drives premiums down. There's clearly a better value if you did the math. And the government finally agreed with us. They stopped marketing F to new enrollees as of 2020. And I know the pitch now, because if you turn 65 before 2020, the guy's going to tell you, this thing is so good, they don't even sell it anymore. It's incredible. And you'll run into people at cocktail parties, I promise you will, and they'll tell you, our insurance is so good, we never see a bill. Yeah, but the reason you never see a bill is there's a giant sucking sound coming out of your checking account every month. To fund a zero deductible health plan, that would be like carrying a zero deductible on your automobile insurance. You wouldn't do that. It'd be crazy expensive. The G has a little bit of a deductible lowering premiums, but maybe, like most baby boomers, you might be in better shape at 65 than your parents were at 55. You may understand the concept of sharing of risk, how insurance works, and you might be intrigued by N. N is getting a lot of play now. N says that you'd accept a little bit more responsibility in the relationship. N says not only will you pay the $240, but then in addition to that, you also agree to doctor co-payments. And you see that right down, you might not in the back row, but at the bottom of that page, your second page, Plan N pays 100% of the Part B coinsurance, except you agree to co-payments. $20 to see a primary, $20 to see any specialist, and $50 if you go to the emergency room and they send you home. If they keep you overnight, it's covered. That idea of agreeing to additional responsibility, additional sharing of risk with the insurance companies, that's going to drive your premiums down. Does that make sense? I don't know. I can show you on a calculator, and I can show you on a calculator that married couple turning 65, if they do the G and they compare it to the N, take that savings in premium over an annual basis, divide it by $20 doctor co-payments, you'll see that N would make really good sense for that couple as long as they're not going to the doctor more than 35 times a year. But that's not my industry. My industry wants to sell you the G because it's the most expensive thing you can buy. Drives us crazy. It's never been our goal. What's value for you? I don't disagree. G is the best sleeping pill that money can buy. It's peace of mind. I can't put that in my calculator. But I know financially, N can make a lot of sense. I know from a long-term play perspective, you can never be singled out for a rate increase. Your claims are shared by everyone that's in your risk pool. Now that cuts both ways. You've got people who had a terrible, terrible year. They're expecting huge rate increases. No, you're sheltered by the pool. And then you've always got Mr. Krabby Pants who complains, my rates went up, I didn't even go to the doctor last year. Why is that? Because your neighbor went on kidney dialysis and we're all pitching in together on this. But that idea of safety in big numbers, that has us leading typically to the 4 big companies that have the steadiest record, the best finances, the best track record of minimal rate increases. What you'd see is what's happening with F. Well, they're not adding any new people to the F pool. By definition, the F pool is getting smaller and sicker and older and sicker and smaller, and those F rates are going through the roof. And we said it 10, 15 years ago, but I'll say it tonight even more emphatically. F is for foolish. And you will still know people that are out there that have that, and it's frustrating to us because they're paying way more than they need to. Now, G would be a better alternative if you're not going to the doctor a lot, N makes sense, but understand this new world of Medicare has different terminology. I know what you hear, but I know what they're saying. We're now headed into the annual election period, AEP, and you hear open enrollment. I can change every year, right? Wrong. The drug programs, we can change those every year between October 15th and December 7th. There's no questions on that. You can migrate every year to Advantage. There's no questions on that. They'll even take you if you're a smoker, you got pre-existing conditions, they'll take you. But the supplements are different. Supplements have a different timetable. From the start of your Part B, that could be at 65, that could be 75, could be 85. From the point in time that you start your Part B, you have a 1-year golden ticket that surrounds that activation date. 6 months before you activate Part B, 6 months after you activate Part B, go anywhere you want to go. They have to take you. That's the law. Once you pick a company and a product, they can never drop you. That's the law. And once you pick a product and a company, they can never single you out for a rate increase. That's the law. But that's a limited window. And we see people all the time. This is a classic example of a great expression. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing. I know that N is N, no matter who I get it from, and I know Medicare's primary. I know they're all doing the same thing, so I'm going to go online and I'm going to find the cheapest N, and I'm going to take that because I'm saving money, and if anything goes wrong, I know I can change every year. Wrong. You've made a tactical blunder. You've hitched your wagon to a very small company, and now they start taking some hits. We've seen this time and again. The smaller companies, they'll pay a broker bonus. Smaller companies, they're underneath the big players, but you cannot be telling me you're smarter in year one than the company that's been in the business for 45 years. They'll take some hits, and I can show you the graveyard of the flavor of the month that was the lowest price, and within a year, they're 10, 15, 20% more than the big players, and up they go because they can't get to critical mass before they have to increase rates on everybody. That timing is really important on these. Understand the concept, please.
And it says Part B excess charges doesn't cover it. What exactly are Part B excess charges?
Medicare wants as many doctors as possible playing in this pool. Doctors start to get their nose a little bit bent out of shape. You guys are in Medicare. You've seen your billing statements. You know that the cardiologist said, I'm brilliant, I charge $350. Medicare says, you're adorable, we pay $80. Of the 80, you're responsible for 20% of the 80. That's why on N it says a copayment of up to $20. Why does it say it that way? Wouldn't it just be 20 at the time of service? No. Wait for Medicare to beat that guy up. We've seen most of these copayments come through at less than $20. But the doctor gets his nose bent out of shape and he says, I was top of my class at Stanford. I demand more than that pittance. Medicare says, calm down. You can actually charge more than our approved amount, but it can be no more than 15% after Medicare's taken their negotiated discount. It's a huge amount of paperwork. And the statistics, Laura, you got the statistics on that?
I actually, one of the insurance companies just a couple of weeks ago sent us something stating that 0.5% of all Medicare claims in the United States have an associated excess charge. So it's typically pretty rare.
And of those charges, the predominance of that is psychiatrists and psychologists. And I apologize if there's a psychiatrist or a psychologist in a room here tonight. But that idea that it's a very limited spectrum, but I also know the sales pitch. Mr. and Mrs. Client, you've got to get the Plan G. Plan G covers excess charges. Well, how often does that actually happen? Let's make a rational assessment of the situation and not be overinsured. A lot of people in this market are overinsured, but that's a great question. The idea of choosing wisely here is critically important. Understand the concept. The one that had no deductible is more expensive than the one that's got the deductible. The one that's got the deductible is more expensive than the one that's got co-payments. And there's even a supplement that says you'd be willing to draw a firewall, a worst case scenario of $2,800. We call that high deductible G. It says that of all the things that Medicare charges, you're willing to stop at $2,800. After that, they pick up 100%. And when you see the discount that Medicare takes, understand you're going to pay the $240 annual deductible. That's one doctor visit. But after that, you're getting the negotiated discounted rate on these things. You can see those rates at Medicare.gov. If you investigate a little bit, you'll see how much Medicare does not pay for these services. It benefits us as consumers. But that idea of digging deeper into your pocket and driving down premiums, remember that when we start talking about Advantage programs, okay? Please.
If you're currently on traditional Medicare Plan F and your year is up, you've been at it over a year, can you switch?
Are you within your window? 6 months before activating B, 6 months after activating B. That's a problem. 44 companies, and those 44 companies, once you get 6 months out, all of them will take you if you can answer these 20 medical questions. It's called underwriting. If you can't get through those medical questions, they're going to say thank you very much, but no thank you. And that's true with 43 out of 44 companies. But two words you do not often hear in the same sentence. In Illinois, we have a blessing. We truly do. One company on the field of play that does not ask medical questions. Even though you've got cancer, you've got pre-existing, you've got COPD, you're 82, there's no way you could possibly qualify. Yes, we have a company that will take you with no medical underwriting questions. It's a blessing for us. The number of people that we save every year is a good feeling. The frustrating part is trying to bite your tongue because you know at 65 they probably shouldn't have taken the F. And it's going to take them time to figure that out. The challenge with Medicare is if you choose poorly, there's nobody who's come knocking on your door. But you're going to find after a year or 5 or 10 or 12, as those premiums keep going up, it's going to drag you to the table. And if you have any friends or relatives that haven't looked at their supplements in the last 5 years, we need to at least have a reality check. How long have you been there? Most of our clients, we would find that we would be changing them. It's not unusual every 5 to 7 years. We have a young lady in our office. All she does is rewrites. She watches the rate increases, and if you bump up over $35 a month, you can rest pretty much assured that we're going to reach out to you. But the first thing we're going to do is, here's 20 medical questions. How do you do on these? If you're healthy, everybody wants you. But if you got pre-existing conditions, 43 out of 44 companies are going to say, thank you very much. We had to take you initially. We don't have to take you now. They're protecting their risk pools, okay? Supplements, what else? Please.
So if you're with a company that offers, say, G and N, Can you, if you sign up for G, can you go to N later?
You certainly can. Just answer these 20 medical questions, okay? Now, we have more flexibility in Illinois than most states. They've instituted a birthday rule, which is beneficial, and that would allow you to go from the G downshift to the N with the same company as long as they still offer the same risk pool that you were in. It's not unusual that these companies will have a risk pool for a period of time, and then to be competitive, they'll seal that risk pool off and bring out a new, pristine, lower-priced risk pool because they're signing up only young people, right? It's a bit of a game. And I don't mean to be flip to call this a game, but it's a big chessboard. How are we going to move the pieces to get maximum value? Your situation being different than your neighbor's or the guy down the street, okay? Please.
So I understand those smaller medical supplement companies, they make you sign up for more than 1 year?
No. You can break the contract with them at any time as long as we've got a viable alternative. We rewrite a lot of people, but the word is always the same. You never let go of one thing until the other thing is in your hot little hand. We've seen people through the years, man, I'm going to save a fortune, and they can't wait to tell off that insurance company, you go ahead and stick it, and then the underwriting comes back and says, sorry, we're not going to take them. What did you do? We told you not to do that. Be calm. Let's work through it together. Taylor in our office is actually outstanding. She can probably tell most people in less than 2 minutes, we got a shot here, let's go. Or there's certain medications, they're just immediate kickouts. If you're on those medications, we know it's not going to work. But we've got the one company that would take you. So we've got flexibility. You're never handcuffed to anything. You have the ability to make changes through the aging process if you'll stay engaged and stay informed, okay? There's A and B. Good, but not complete. We need to make it complete or complete-er. That's why we pick up a supplement, to supplement A and B. And then we have the potential to pick up a drug program. Drug programs have changed dramatically this year, but the base remains the same. The basic information remains the same. On a Part D drug prescription program, and what we'd say is, with the D, the changes this year that have been instituted by the Inflation Reduction Act are significant. And if we understand our history, we know there was this guy that had an apple fall on his head, Isaac Newton. And we'd understand his third law of motion, which is very important to understand here tonight. For every action, there's a reaction. And there's been a reaction in the insurance companies because the government came to the drug programs and said, look, we're getting some really bad feedback here. There's this thing called the coverage gap or the donut hole. And if you haven't heard about it, God bless you, because too many people were falling into the coverage gap, the donut hole, and it got very expensive. So the government said, you know what? We got to get rid of this donut hole thing. How are we going to do that? We're going to put mandates on the insurance companies. And these mandates are not cheap. And you may think insurance companies are evil. You may think they're greedy, but they ain't stupid. And they're not just going to eat these edicts that the government has passed down. They're handing them off to us. That's where the reaction comes in. But still, the ground rules remain the same. You don't have to take a drug program when it's first offered to you, but if you don't, they're just going to wait for you, and there will be a penalty further down the road. And you'll pay that penalty in perpetuity. It means forever. All the drug programs are fluid. You are a free agent, and every year, the annual election period, which is right around the corner, it's a critically important time for you. The insurance companies are forced to show you their cards. They've got to send you an annual notice of change. If you're one of our clients, you know we've already emailed you twice. We're doing specialized webinars, deep dives into the drug programs because of the changes this year. This idea of you being able to make changes, very important. The annual notice of change is a critical document. They got to show you how they're changing. And this year there's been significant change. All the programs are going to offer different formularies. That means different menus. You go to a different restaurant, there's a different menu. Those menus are broken up into tiers. Tier 1 is the cheapest generics. Tier 2, newer generics. Tier 3, brand name drugs. Tier 4, brand name drugs that are advertised on TV by famous people. Tier 5, specialty drugs. Quite literally, there are drugs where you could take chemotherapy in the privacy of your own home. I assure you, if it's even covered, it's really expensive. The government put edicts on the insurance companies, and they said now, these co-payments in a calendar year cannot add up to more than $2,000, and we're going to tell you what to do. And the insurance company said, well, okay, but if I'm covering this many medications and now I can only get $2,000, I'm not going to cover this. I'm going to cover this. And we've seen formularies, the menu of drugs is getting skinnier, it's getting narrower, and you may find that a drug you had last year that was a tier 3 is now a tier 4. You may find the tier 4 is a tier 5. You may find that they're not covering some drugs at all. Critically important time to be aware of what's going on in the marketplace. All of the drug programs had stages of coverage, and you moved through these stages of coverage based upon the medications you were taking. They weren't tracking necessarily your copayment, they were tracking the retail value of your drugs. This year, if the retail value of your drugs was to exceed $5,000, then you would move from the initial copayment stage into the coverage gap or the donut hole. In the donut hole, things got more expensive. Now you're not paying a flat copayment, maybe your Eliquis for $47, then you'd move into the coverage gap and you'd be responsible for 25% of the retail value of the drug. That means your $600 Eliquis just went from $47 to $150. This got really bad press. People didn't like it, and in an election year, we've decided that we're going to get rid of that evil, stupid coverage gap. And how are we going to do that? Well, first thing you'll see this next year is that the deductibles for your programs have gone from a set $545, they've gone up to $590. So the $590 deductible is one of the new aspects of these drug programs. Now, not all of the drug programs have a $590 deductible. Expensive drug programs may have no deductible at all, but be aware that the deductible typically applies to the purchase of brand name drugs, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5. What we've done now in 2025, we're collapsing these two priors into one copayment stage. But understand, here the good news is you can't pay more than $2,000 in copayments, but they did nothing to address the premiums that you're paying for your program. So we've seen in many instances significant increases in the premiums for your drug program. The $990 this year goes to $44. The $27 this year goes to $52. The $46 this year goes to $81. There's increases in premium above and beyond the copayments for your medications. Be aware of that. Look at what's going on there. This idea that now in this copay stage, and that's what it is, everything here is going to be a copayment, but what they've done is if you're not paying close attention, you're going to say, oh look, my copayment was $47 and now it's only $35. That's terrific. No. That was a dollar sign. That's a percent sign. That's different. A $25 copayment is different than a 25% copay. So be aware of how your drug copayments could be changing. It's significant. This landscape now, they're smoothing it out, and now it is simpler to understand, but it could potentially be more expensive for us. And I understand the nobility of what they're trying to do here. The idea here is to try to smooth it out, make it easier to understand. It is easier to understand. Now you just pay the deductible, and maybe that's $590 on your first Eliquis. But that's a $600 drug. Then you move into the initial kind of the copayment stage, and it's a copay or coinsurance. Huge difference on what you're actually going to be spending. The potential here is that Eliquis that you were spending $47 for this year could potentially come out of the gates on you at 25 to 30% of that $600 retail. Critically important, annual notice of change. Be aware of the changes here and the ripples that this is sending through my industry. Kind of a dark day for us. The majority of the insurance companies that offer drug programs have decided we're not worth anything, and they've stopped paying the agents any remuneration to assist you on this slippery slope. It is infuriating to me. We've got clients in their 80s and 90s who are not going to call an 800 number. They don't own a computer, and they've looked to us for years, and now the government said, you just go ahead and do that for free. It's not really fair, but them's the rules, and we're living with it. We're doing a webinar, a deep dive on these drug programs. We have a tool that's going out to our clients to help them analyze. We think it's better and smoother than the Medicare.gov calculator, but these are things that we're doing to try to help mitigate these changes. Annual notice of change is critically important. Understand the ramifications, the sonic boom from the Inflation Reduction Act. I feel that whether you're on one party or the other, I don't really care, but these guys in Washington, they're playing checkers. They make a move and that's all they can see. They need to be playing chess. If you do this, it's going to have ramifications. What could those ramifications be? I don't know. I'm just going to move my little checker and let it happen. They didn't really think through what was going to transpire here. People will be scrambling. You can do this at 1-800-Medicare. You can check your meds right here at medicare.gov. There's SHIP counselors that are there to help you. But right now, these ANOCs, as we call them, the annual notice of change, they're just starting to hit, and people are starting, our phone has started to burn up in the last 3 days. More coming, more information needed. Please.
I've been noticing when I pick up our prescriptions from Silver Spring, it says I owe 0.
And that would be a great example of a Tier 1 generic. And that's about 75 to 80% of all drugs that are available in the market are generics. They're very innocent. Amlodipine, losartan, metformin, there's any number of them. If it's a Tier 1, it's a 0 copay. If it's a Tier 2, it's usually $3, maybe $5. But if it's a Tier 3, you're going to bang right into that deductible. And after the deductible, you're going to go to coinsurance, and all of that is something that you're not looking at right now because you're not taking those expensive drugs. I assure you, there's a slew of people. This is Januvia, Jardiance. This is Xarelto. This is Eliquis. You can rest assured, if you see a dancing woman on TV praising this medication, this is going to be a Tier 3 drug. Lord forbid it's a Tier 4 drug. It's even more expensive. Whatever you're doing, keep it up, because if you can stay on generics, you're going to save a lot of money here. I'm waiting for you. I'm sorry.
Are the drugs based on a pool, or is it based on the medication you're taking?
Based on the medication you're taking. What bracket does it fall into? Is it a Tier 1 generic, a Tier 2, a Tier 3? Tier 3s are typically brand name drugs.
Okay, so when they charge you your premium every year, you go in and you select, you gotta find, if I remember right, you gotta find your pharmacy and then what drugs you're on, and then...
Vice versa. Drugs first, drugs are paramount, and then the pharmacies, because we want to, in a perfect world, to find out our best value, we want to coordinate. We want to, each of the drug programs has a associated co-partner at the retail level. What we found is in years gone by, mail order used to be your best option. Mail order is not your best option anymore. The retailers have figured out this is an incredible way to get people into the stores. You want to be aware of what is the preferred pharmacy. I've seen people pick the right program and go to the wrong pharmacy and pay too much. But at that calculator, you have the ability to enter your medications. Once you've entered your medications, then you enter your pharmacies. And sometimes it's worthwhile to walk across the street. You won't go to Walgreens, you'll walk across the street to Osco and save money. That's what you've got to look at. Understanding that these drug companies are the insurance is very competitive. But unfortunately, as a ramification of this legislation, this year we've got 21 drug programs to choose from. Next year we've got 15. I don't like that. I want more competition. I want more pressure bringing prices down. Please.
Seems like the occasional prescription I get, they compare it to Good RX, and Good RX always is better than my plan.
Not always, depends, but yeah, Good RX is a tool that we've got in our toolbox, and we recommend it highly.
Can you drop this and just use Good RX?
You shouldn't, because if you drop your drug program, then you're going to be subject to penalties. And there's literally a drug program this year that's a 0 premium plan. That would be foolishness. You take the 0 premium plan to avoid any penalties. But GoodRx is a reality check. Anytime you get a new drug, I want to go and see what is it going to cost through my plan, what's it going to cost through GoodRx. Now, through your plan, you may have a deductible. You got to pay that off. But once you've paid off the deductible, it could be way less than GoodRx. Let's look at the big picture. This year, people will be shocked. We've run several comparatives. And if you're on expensive drugs, it actually turns out that one of the more expensive drug programs, it's $81 a month next year, turns out to actually be really good. but people will look at parts of it and not the whole picture. What you want to look at is the total expense for the year. I want to know what's the deductible, what's the premium, what are the co-payments, what's the total, and that's what you get at a website like Medicare.gov. Don't be thrown that there's a $24 drug program and they want to put you in the $81 program. 81's more than 24, but the 81 treats your meds more favorably overall the course of the year. The 24 has higher co-payments. So we're able to see that, and it's a tool that we want to avail ourselves of, okay? All right, let's, please.
That question on the donut hole. Years ago, when we first turned 65, I thought it was like 12,000.
No, never been 12,000.
So now it's 8,000. So, I mean, if you're on like the more expensive drugs, the tier 4, the tier 5, that donut hole is 8,000 now?
It's a convoluted number. It was never $8,000, and I can show you the math on that, but it's government math. That's all I got to say. We have many clients this year that had dread meds. If they're in the right program, their maximum out of pocket this year was about $3,500. That's all in. That's the premium, that's the co-payments, that's a coverage gap, the whole 9 yards. So that 8,000 is kind of fictitious, but we can go into that offline. Any other questions before we move on, please?
You mentioned a few minutes ago about Plan F not being open. A couple weeks ago, I had called and I asked if I could get into Plan F. They said yes, I could, as long as I joined AARP.
That is a misleading statement, to be sure. That's a partial sentence and a half-truth all wrapped up with an asterisk on it. You're entitled to F because you turned 65 before January of 2020. You're entitled to F. And they would gladly sell you F, but I promise you, I'd happily show you the numbers. You compare F to G, you will see that G saves you hundreds of dollars a year. Why? Because you agreed to give back the first $240. It's a much better value to be in the G. Accept the deductible and pay way less overall than you would with the F. But the idea that you could only get F through AARP, that's fictitious. We had a woman last night at our seminar. She was told her cousin couldn't get Mutual of Omaha because she lived in Lake County. She could only buy Blue Cross Blue Shield. That is a bold-faced lie. Medicare is primary. All the supplements are available in Lake County. The problem is she wound up talking to somebody that was giving her partial information and trying to get her to do something that might not be in her best interests. We work as brokers, we're fiduciaries. That means we do what's right for you above and beyond where we are. That's why we're helping our flock with all of the drug programs this year, trying to shepherd them to the best place. It's something that we do because it's the right thing to do, not because it's financially solvent, okay? Any other questions? Please, one more and then we're moving on.
Who would that be?
I'm sorry?
The big 3?
Of the supplemental companies?
Yes.
I would say there's 4, and I would say in no particular order. We like Blue Cross Blue Shield. We like AARP, which is United Healthcare. We like Humana, and we like Mutual of Omaha. Okay? Those are the hitters. Then you got 41 other companies that you've never heard of before, but the agent is assuring you that, ma'am, it's the same thing no matter what you do, so why not go with the least expensive company? There's some, the line that you got it's repeated far too often. And I appreciate you being here tonight to try to find out the truth. Please.
So if you have to fill out the underwriting to try to change your insurance or just your plan, and they'd say, no, we don't take you, nothing changes, you just stay.
You never let go of what you've got until you've got something better in hand.
They're not gonna, it would be a tip off, but all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, this person's not really gotten sick.
That's not how insurance works.
Okay.
Now, you just don't cancel what you've got until we can assure you and provide proof that you've been approved, okay? So here's our one pathway. We've just discovered that A and B is not complete, and we may choose a pathway where we like to choose any doctor, and we pick up a drug program and a supplement. We put those 3 things together. Customizable, budgetable. I know what I'm paying every month. I know what my exposure is. If I do the G, I pay $240. After that, I'm golden. Drugs are secondary. You also need that. But that idea of those 3 pieces together, and this is where most people are going to start. And you're going to find that your mom and dad did this and your friends did this. And it's a comfortable place to be, but it's also something that people go to sleep on. And they don't check it on a regular basis. And they don't avail themselves of the tools or the help that's out there to make smart decisions. And eventually, all roads will lead you to a table where you've got to discuss the fact that this stuff's going up. And Dad will be sitting at the kitchen table, and he'll have out the benefits, and he'll have out the bills. And you know, honey, when we started, your supplement and your drug program was pretty reasonable. But here we are 8 years later, and now your supplement and your drug program is running us about $250 a month. And my supplement and my drug program, that's running us another $250 a month. That's $6,000 a year. And as far as I can tell, we went to the doctor a total of 7 times last year. Are we really getting value? That's an excellent question. What are we going to do about that? Well, maybe we should look into it. And this time of year where people think everything's in play and advertising's going crazy, maybe we get a shot at them. And you sit down and you do what's called a needs analysis. Not what you got, but what would make sense. I don't mean to be mean with you, but you never really should have taken that F. It's way overpriced for what it does. We could move you to the G and we could save you some premiums. You're not going to the doctor all that much. Maybe even the N makes sense. Or you've been in Medicare long enough to see how they pay these bills. That high deductible G makes sense for a lot of people, but it's sometimes scary because the term high deductible is attached to it, but we could possibly tune up your supplements. And I'm sorry, you haven't looked at your drug program in 8 years? You're kidding me, right? I know why you took the drug program you took 8 years ago, because you were on 2 tier 3 brand name drugs. And you paid this premium. But here we are 8 years later, that premium has gone up, and those 2 brand name drugs, they're now generic. What are you doing in I'm sorry, you shouldn't be in a $72 drug program for 2 generic drugs. You should be down in the teens, maybe even less. And we can tune them up, and it's a great feeling, and you're able to save them money, and everybody's happy until mom always wants to know, how long could we have been saving $250 a month? Well, it's been about 8 years. You probably should have come here sooner. That idea of tuning it up is great. But they'll also watch TV, and they'll see Joe Namath, and they'll see William Shatner, and they'll believe in Jimmy J.J. Walker, and they'll say, you know what? There's this thing out there called Advantage where I don't know what it is, but they throw an awful lot of zeros up on the screen. And I know how the human mind works. You see 0, you think free, okay? You hear annual election period, you think open enrollment. These are different ideas, different concepts. This idea of Advantage is making a move, and that move needs to be clearly thought out. He's here saying, I'm going to spend $6,000, but if I put that $6,000 into a cookie jar and I come over here, what's the difference? Well, there's significant differences. There is no free lunch. This will have lower premiums and in many instances a 0 premium, but they never drop the F-bomb. It's not free because you got to have, as that gentleman was asking, you got to have A and B to do anything. Must have A and B. Got to pay the B premium. You're not getting away from that. But on an Advantage program, you're going to put that card away because now a private insurance company is going to step in and run the show. We said this was a 3-legged stool. This is one card that you're going to utilize for all of your services. This is brought to us by a private insurance company, which will mean we don't necessarily need any doctor, any hospital, anywhere in the United States. We can keep it all with Humana or Aetna or Blue Cross or Cigna or AARP. We'd stay within their network. The government is not running Medicare for the $174.70 that you're sending them a month. They're dropping over $1,000 a month on each of us. They'll take that money, they'll send it to a private insurance company, and you literally put that A and B card away. We're not going to use that. Now we're going with a private insurance company. Over here, I can put you into a supplement where for $240, after that it's the all-you-can-eat buffet. Or you could maybe accept co-payments and drive down. Or you could accept more out-of-pocket and drive it down. Here we're moving to an a la carte menu. Here now, you've got co-payments for almost every little thing you do. Primary is 5 or 10, the specialist is 25 or 30, the MRI was 150, the ambulance ride was 285, a night in the hospital is 300, 300, 300. But it has a firewall, it has a worst case scenario, it has a maximum out of pocket. But to get to a 0 premium plan, what do you think that does to the maximum out of pocket? It goes higher. You've got 2 flavors here. You've got HMO. That means you agree to keep everything within a medical group. And your advocate primary is only going to refer you to advocate derm, advocate endo, advocate podiatrist. That's what an HMO is. You need referrals and you stay in a very tight network. Insurance companies love that because they can control you. But that's kind of fallen out of favor. People like a little bit more choice. And so there's the ability to do it on a PPO chassis. That means you can get a wider selection of doctors, and I'll be darned if it's not still a zero premium in most instances. But wait a second. You said if the insurance company does more, they charge more. In this instance, they don't charge more premium-wise, but you can rest assured. Co-payments go up, out-of-pocket goes up, all these things change a little bit. You'll see these advertised incessantly on TV, and the tip-off is, during the commercial, they're going to say, dental, vision, hearing, get all the benefits you're entitled to. That is a plug for Advantage. What they're doing there is they know dental is like catnip for seniors. They gravitate toward it. But understand what they're saying is not necessarily what you're hearing. You hear dental, ding, I got insurance. They didn't say that. They said a dental benefit. A benefit can be dental floss. A benefit can be 2 cleanings per year as long as you go to our guy in Evanston. A benefit may not be what you think it is, and it's important to understand the rules of engagement here. There is true good dental, worth doing, but some of it is pretty light. They'll offer vision. Usually it's maybe $100, $125 for lenses and frames. The hearing benefit is you get one of those wooden horns that you hold up to your ear. Understand the rules of engagement here. Medicare runs roughshod on these guys. They're all going to play by Medicare rules. Medicare C, also known as Advantage, we call it Medicare C for complete. It's one card. Everything's bound up in that chassis. They will have more restrictive networks. That's a given because you're agreeing to stay within that insurance company's domain. They'll all have co-payments for services, but I assure you, one company's co-payments are different than another, but the beauty is Medicare forces them to lay their benefits in exactly side by side. We can sit in our office and go line by line. Who has, and basically it's a playoff. Who has the lower co-payments? Who has the lowest capped exposure? That's your firewall. It's your worst case scenario. It's your maximum out-of-pocket, capped exposure. HMO is going to have a lower exposure because they can control you. A PPO will have a higher exposure. They'll include the Part D drug program built right into the chassis. And sometimes there are some things hidden here that could be very beneficial. I would predict to you, given the changes on the standalone drug programs over here and the money that they're charging and how the rates are going up, you will get a lot of phone calls from people saying, hey, I understand your drug program went up. Would you want a zero premium drug program? Danger. Understand what's happening there. They're pitching you on price. They're maybe not pitching you on a full package. You want to understand the ramifications. They include a drug program, and they're all available to us during the annual election period. If you start with original Medicare and you want to come over here, it's just about the time to do that. Between October 15th and December 7th, you can move over to an Advantage program. They will welcome you with open arms. And the insurance companies will salivate that they're going to get almost $1,000 a month to take care of Tom, and Tom's going to stay in our network, and Tom's going to have co-payments for services. Heck yeah, we can throw him dental and vision and hearing and additional benefits. They all offer a gym club benefit. There's some very good things in there. I'm not disparaging them. I'm saying the way they're advertised is disingenuous. It's one of the tools that we have in our toolbox. We want to be aware of the ramifications. Mama didn't raise no fool. You don't get something for nothing. You're giving up something in the process. The changes that we saw here in the drug programs have rippled over into the Advantage programs. We would say that 2024, very possibly, the golden year of Advantage. Everybody was falling all over themselves to give you stuff, right? You heard about free groceries, and you heard about free heat, and you heard about all these things. And the government said, wait a second, what is your primary focus? What is your mission? It's medical, to take care of people. Stop throwing money at people at this stuff. Let's focus in on what your core objectives are. And we've seen these Advantage programs this year paring back on the additional benefits. That's not bad, but just don't be surprised. And I know we'll get a lot of phone calls from a lot of people who they had an over-the-counter benefit. They got a benefit every 90 days. They got an amount of money to be able to buy aspirin and vitamins and toothpaste, all these great stuff. This year that's going down a little bit. The dental's going down a little bit. The co-payments are going up a little bit, and the out-of-pockets are going up. Never more important this year to look at your Advantage program. Understand that you are a free agent. You have the ability to make a move, right here during the annual election period. It'd be a good time for a checkup. Understand my world. My world is driven by commissions. And I know one of the problems in our industry is you get misled if you only talk to one person, you get misled if you talk to a captive agent, and you'll find that a lot of agents, this is all they want to talk about. Why? Because it pays double the commissions of this side of the equation. We do Advantage. We seem to do less Advantage than many agents because we seem to be the only ones going through the booklet. You do see on page 16 that every physical therapy visit is going to be a $35 copay. I'm never going to use physical therapy. I know, but if you do, there's going to be $35. And we know men. Men go for 2 times and then they figure they'll just do it themselves. Liar. You need a professional to hurt you, okay? We've seen time and again, the difference between men and women is marked. Women typically, I'm not being sexist here, I'm just saying my experience leads me to believe women typically have their team of doctors and they're not going to change. They don't want referrals. They want to make sure they can see who they want to see when they want to see them, right? Men seem to operate on the Jiffy Lube philosophy of healthcare. Don't care who I see as long as I got a coupon and I'm in and out in 20 minutes, okay? Doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It means we need to understand the rules of engagement. And this guy over here that was going to spend $6,000, he comes over here on a pay-as-you-go chassis, very similar to your employer plan. This is a weapon that we have. It's a tool in the toolbox. Is my toolbox one size fits all? It can't be. If you've ever played golf, you look at a bag of clubs and you understand that there's different clubs for different shots, right? What's right for your situation might not be right for somebody else, okay? Questions on Advantage, please.
Can you summarize what you just said? Like what kind of person, what kind of user would be in each plan?
Typically, you're going to have people gravitating toward Advantage that are younger and healthier. Now, we see it both ways, okay? We see that part of the market. I also see the other end of the market where if you're traveling a lot, maybe you're a snowbird, you've got additional properties, this makes really good sense because if you just bought an RV, I want to make sure I can see any doctor, any hospital, anywhere in the United States, and that's great. And it's inexpensive and it's wonderful, it gives you everything you want, but eventually the aging process, we see people in their later 80s, even their early 90s, they're not jet setting anymore. They're sticking around. They're across the street from the hospital that they're going to use and their doctors are all in network. And their premiums here have escalated to a point that could be more than their worst case scenario here. That can make sense. Different horses for different courses, the ability to make changes. Now in Illinois, we have a blessing. We have a Medicare supplement company that doesn't ask questions, and that gives us a level of flexibility most states don't have. If you're over here and you decide, you know what, this sounds pretty intriguing, I'm going to try this Medicare Advantage thing, note that Medicare protects you. They give you a 1-year trial right. Anytime in the first year you figured out that maybe this isn't what I want, cool, we'll bring you right back over here, okay? But in most states, you make this move after 1 year, you better hear that door closing behind you. You better have chosen wisely. Every year now, you can choose among all the Advantage programs. We've got 54 of them this year, so that gives you a level of flexibility. But your desire to come back over here, and I know the sales pitch, Mr. and Mrs. Client, every year, if you don't like your Advantage program, you can come right back over to original Medicare, take that Medicare card out of the drawer, dust it off. You're going to use that any doctor, any hospital, sign up for any of the drug programs you want because it's the annual election period, and we can go ahead and apply for a supplement. Why don't you sign right here? I'm sorry, back up. What was that word you used? Well, we can apply for a supplement, indicating that it's no problem. It is a problem. Because if you can't get through those 20 medical underwriting questions and you're in Florida, you're going to find that this door is going to be closed. If you're healthy, you can get back over here. But why would you leave this to come over here? Maybe the doctor that you wanted to see wasn't over here. But I'm sorry, if you want to see a doctor, by definition, that's a pre-existing condition. You're here. So this becomes really important. In Illinois, gives us the flexibility, the fallback that we have to have a company that doesn't ask medical questions. It makes it fluid. Medicare has made these much more user-friendly. We'll probably see some changing. The first 3 months of each year, January and February and March, you get what we call the Medicare mulligan. You get to make a one-for-one change. So even if you roll over, because far too many people don't pay attention to the ANOC, Far too many people don't bother to look at it, and far too many people get to January and go, what do you mean my doctor's no longer in network? That can be a problem, but Medicare gives them at that point a 3-month period to change to any of the other Advantage programs, or in Illinois, we can come back over here and get a supplement, okay? So this is a highlight of my evening, and it should be for you guys too. We have come to the halfway point of my presentation. What did we learn here tonight? A and B is good, but A and B is nowhere near complete. We're going to add a drug program and a supplement, and that's one pathway called Original Medicare. Or we have the potential to do an Advantage program. No two people are the same. What we do is shepherd you through the process. There is no charge to you for our services. What we do is navigate and try to find the best package of benefits for your situation. And the best package of benefits for your situation this year could be different next year. 2/3 of the audience, maybe more, said they're already here in Medicare. Thank you for coming here. I give you kudos because most don't. They make one decision, they throw it in the drawer, they never look at it again. Well, they do 8 or 9 or 10 years down the road when the thing gets so out of control expensive that they no longer can afford it. That's not the time to find out that you didn't choose wisely. The time to choose wisely is initially, and keep it on a short leash, okay? All right, you guys, this is where you clap wildly, and I say thank you very much.